I'm going to start, Pete, by just asking you. You've been at media availability today. I think how was life at the Chiefs? It seems all fine and dandy as usual.
Yeah, we had press conferences today, Thursday. It actually started a day later than usual since they play Monday Night Football. So it'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday practices and media this week, leading into Monday night. They'll be the last game of the week. And it was a big day because the Chiefs made a trade in the past few days, going and getting a defensive end from the New England Patriots, Joshua Uche. And he came to the podium, and you could really, I think, feel the energy that he has of excitement being in Kansas City. And when you play for one team, and we know how it's kind of going with New England right now, and all of a sudden you go to the undefeated team who is very clearly the Super Bowl favorite, even despite their injuries, I think you got to feel pretty good. And I think we got a lot of that from Josh. He is very excited to be playing with Chris Jones. When you're a defensive end and you have Chris Jones in the middle there, you can expect the one-on-ones because Chris Jones eats two and three bodies. And so good to talk to him. Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid also came to the podium. They're continuing to integrate DeAndre Hopkins into the offense. And so we'll see if he gets more snaps in this Monday night game.
You mentioned Josh Uche there. I was going to sort of touch on him a little bit later, but we might as well talk now. How much to the strength of the Chiefs does it play that they're able to kind of execute trades like this? I mean, it's a bit of a cliche and it's been bandied around over the last week, but the rich get richer really, and adding someone like
Yeah.
Uche just kind of really feels that way.
Yeah, I think what it shows you is that the personnel staff is never satisfied. Like they're continuing to unturn stones to just see if there's any way to make the team better. I think there's a cliche in the NFL that is, you can never have enough pass rushers. And I think you can make a case if you include the fact that Charles Omenihu is coming back, maybe the Chiefs have enough defensive ends, but they really like this player. The general manager, Brett Veach, really liked him coming out of the college in Michigan in 2020. Didn't land on the Chiefs, ended up with the Patriots the last 4 or 5 years. And there is an opportunity here because there was a new coaching staff. Uche's role had kind of diminished a little bit
Mhm.
when it came to his snap count with New England. And Kansas City, when they like a certain player, they're willing to make the move and they go and send a draft pick to New England. It's not for a couple of years. And so essentially you're getting a player for really not overspending in draft capital. And I tend to think any player that seemingly the defensive line coach Joe Cullen and defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo touch, it seems to turn to gold. And so I'm optimistic for what they have in Uche. And what it does also, too, is it takes a little bit of the pressure off of Felix Anudike-Uzama, who was last year's first rounder. I think that he had really been under this glaring spotlight of, did the Chiefs make the right move in taking him with the last pick of the first round 2 years ago? And now it buys him time to ease back, develop a little bit, and there's another body in there that can get that pressure on the quarterback, and I think it really rounds out the room.
And also, it's the second trade in sort of a couple of weeks that maybe aren't names that have been too familiar to the Chiefs. I think Andy Reid has not been shy in saying, going back to the well for some familiar names is something they've done. But Uche and Hopkins kind of speak to a team, and the Chiefs are never not all in, but they are very much all in again on this three-peat, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say so. I think they're trying to spend every single dollar that they have, right? It's not like they're working and trying to save any kind of cap space. They're using every single cent, and I think it's because they really want to be the one team in NFL history to accomplish back to back to back championships. And I think you want to assume the Chiefs will have this opportunity again because Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are so good, but history tells us you get one shot at this, right? Like it's rare to even get back-to-back championships, and so I think Kansas City's fully invested in trying to make it happen, and I think that's why you saw them go and get DeAndre Hopkins. They were trying to piecemeal what was the wide receiver room. They lose Brown, they lose Rice. Smith-Schuster actually looked pretty good for a few weeks, and then he has an injury. And then you just really had no reliable wide receiver in there that you felt good about. And so I think they needed to go and make a move. And when all these guys you would think get back in the mix, probably not Rice, but we're thinking Hollywood Brown and Isaiah Pacheco, and then Smith Schuster maybe in a couple weeks. think you feel really good about a lot of the weapons that you have. It rounds out to a really nice offense. And what's become fortunate for the Chiefs is as they're facing these injuries, they have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers followed by the Denver Broncos. And not to say that anyone can't beat anyone on a given day in the NFL. Hell, we just saw the Cleveland Browns knock off the Baltimore Ravens, right? And no one really expected that. But it buys you time before the Buffalo Bills, and the Chiefs will be hoping to have a few more weapons back by the time they play the Bills in 3 weeks.
What about that 7-0 start then, Pete? Because it feels like for the Chiefs, and it feels like this every season, really, that they just use the regular season to get themselves into kind of
Yeah.
championship form. They haven't quite hit their stride, but in many ways, that ability to tough it out is something that kind of gets them ready for the postseason. It feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a tangible feeling in previous years when it could be up and down. They would have stretches where there might be a lull, you would call it, where it did seem like maybe they were a little bit disinterested in the regular season, and sometimes they would get caught off guard and lose to a team like the Raiders, like they did last year. And what I think has been different this year is they haven't lost, and so everyone is talking about the three-peat, and where everyone was so excited about this opportunity to potentially be the first team to win three in a row. And now suddenly, creeping along is this potential to not lose at all, right? Like they have faced so much adversity and they only stand to get players back. And still, each and every week, they put them up, they knock them down, and they've been able to win every single game. And so I think that raises interest in the regular season to an extent. Last week, I could tell that the energy was there because they didn't like losing to the Raiders last
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, and they, I think, wanted to make sure that that type of thing didn't happen again. But now I think every week they win, seemingly, I think it's going to get more and more important that they don't lose to them. And so just because they're undefeated right now, I don't sense until maybe that happens. And let's say they have one loss and they're 3 or 4 games ahead of the AFC. If they can do that, we'll see with other teams like the Houston Texans and Ravens and so on and so forth. But I just tend to think as long as they're still undefeated, you're going to get the Chiefs' absolute best each and every week because now it's not only just the three-peat, it's also a possibility here of an undefeated three-peat. If they get the one on Monday, it's 8-0. You get after that, you're more than halfway there. So we're getting to that territory where it could be very interesting.
How much does it speak to the culture that sort of the front office and in particular Andy Reid have created that they're able to, I suppose, create these milestones and find new motivations each year? Because as we mentioned, back to back is one thing, back to back to back would be another thing. But it feels like for the very best teams, and the Chiefs are definitely there, getting that
Yeah,
motivation is so key.
Yeah, I think it extends to Patrick Mahomes. Like Andy Reid and Brett Veach, the general manager, they're ultra motivated. I mean, I think that they've always kind of felt like they can be the best at their particular roles in the NFL, and they have been. I mean, I think when you see what Andy Reid is able to do with different types of teams, whether it be with Alex Smith, with Patrick Mahomes, you have Tyreek Hill, you trade Tyreek Hill, you have Travis Kelce at the beginning of his career. Now he's a little bit older, you lose a wide receiver like Rashee Rice. Andy can pivot, and Brett Veach, who really he sort of brought him up in the NFL, started as an intern for Andy Reid. They kind of see the same when it comes to football strategy and how to build a football team. And I think they want to be the best. And Patrick Mahomes certainly wants to be the best. I think what sticks out to me about Mahomes is even when he's playing something like locker room basketball, or you hear about off-season stories when he's golfing, he just wants to kick the other person's ass. Like it doesn't even matter what sport it is, and you could certainly see that in the NFL. It's an ultra competitor. I think back to 2019 when they won their first one in this era. They had also won one in 1969, and I think there's so much going on in the world. You had just finally won the championship. You could tell that they wanted to do it, but of course you had those moments during the regular season when you were like, this isn't the high of the highs. And then they end up losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think that was a key moment because it helped Mahomes and some of those players that are now a little bit older realize like this isn't just going to happen, right? Like we have to be gun ho every day, every year, every month, every week, every day, continuing to get better and better and better. And now I think they're hungry. Like they were hungry for the back to back, and they're even hungrier, in my opinion, for what is the three-peat because I just think they see so much history that can be made here. And I also think a thing that they wouldn't talk about, this is not something that Patrick Mahomes would ever embrace. He lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I don't think Mahomes wants to be the best right now. I think he wants to be the best of all time.
Mhm.
And so if you're going to be the best of all time, having lost to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, you need to do something that Tom Brady was never able to do. He did back to back. He was never able to get three in a row, and he was never able to complete an undefeated season. He almost did. So those are two very motivating factors, I think, about 2024.
You've covered the team for a while, Pete. The Chiefs seems to have got just almost in some ways bigger than the sport at times, a little bit like the Patriots, and
Yeah.
that's what happens with dominant teams. How have you seen things change just in terms of the way the team are covered and the size of things?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot more attention on Kansas City. When I took my job as an intern, I was a reporter intern when I first started 10, 11 years ago, and Kansas City was sort of like this hidden gem that I think, my story is a little bit unique, but I think in the perspective of the United States, not everyone really knew a lot about Kansas City. Like I know that people knew about like the barbecue and so on and so forth, and the Chiefs were in a way, historically lovable losers to an extent, and the Royals were never really, all that good. And from a sports perspective, there was nothing really drawing you to find out like, oh, Kansas City, I want to learn more about that. And then now, I think with just how good the Chiefs have been, it's really made people know of Kansas City
Mhm.
across the country, for better or for worse. I'm sure there's people in Denver and Oakland and the Chargers fans that exist that don't love the attention that they get, but it's become a Michael Jordan, like as you were saying, Tom Brady esque
Mm.
following. And you hear different stories from fans that go and watch the Chiefs in other cities where you're not just getting Chiefs fans that are traveling, there are Chiefs fans that are just in those cities. I had a friend tell me the other day he was watching a Chiefs Chargers game and met a family from California, and the kid just got obsessed with the Chiefs. They had never even been to Kansas City or Arrowhead, and that's what was happening when Michael Jordan was doing what he was
Yeah.
doing. And so I think to an extent they have that swag that you look for in a dynasty. They've certainly have the winning, and to another extent they stay humble. They don't talk a lot of trash. At least like not outside of the game. I mean, sometimes you could see them draw back and forth, within the game, but they're not really boasting on any opponent. They stay humble and they really do it on the football field for the most part. And I think that's made them a really likable team. And it's hard to argue with winning. And then when you see Travis Kelce get with the biggest pop star in the world, and now they are in this relationship, and you have celebrities coming to Arrowhead, and it's become a destination. I mean, I've really seen it in these past 10 years where, I would have described Kansas City back in 14 when I started doing this type of stuff as a hidden gem. Now I think it clearly, if it's not there yet, it's approaching one of those second tier cities. I would put New York and Chicago and LA as your like top tier
Yeah.
cities. But the Denvers, the Nashvilles, I think Kansas City is getting to be right there.
I can't believe it took us 13 minutes, Pete, to get Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce into the conversation.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
but look, a little bit about culture, but I suppose Andy Reid's been able to keep a lid on those, I suppose, off-field distractions that they would be for other teams, but they seem to have embraced it. And I include Patrick Mahomes in that front because he's
yeah.
dabbling in investments in different sports and kind of we saw him play in the match a couple of years ago and all those sorts of things. Just a little bit on Kelce in that regard. How have you seen him evolve really? Because he's a cornerstone of this team.
Well, I just think he's had so many productive years. I mean, he could have retired probably 3 years ago and still made the Hall of Fame. And so it just has the ultimate respect of his peers. And from what I have heard with this Taylor Swift thing, for what it's worth, and talking to people in the building, he went above and beyond to just make sure that his teammates knew that he was still getting his work in, right? Like it's one thing to be one of the greatest tight ends of all time, if not the greatest. We'll see how it goes and how he's judged in the long run. But I just think when you bring into the fold something that people are talking about that is external, from the team, I think you got to go ahead and do the extra mile in ensuring okay, I want my guys to see me coming early, staying late, those type of things. And he's still, even like despite all the businesses and the attention that he gets as celebrity, not even with Taylor Swift, but from doing some acting and doing
Yeah.
some game show hosting and hosting Saturday Night Live, he keeps football the main thing. And I think these guys realize too, and I'm extending it to Mahomes and Chris Jones. I think they realize like that extracurricular stuff is cool. You can make a lot of money doing that type of stuff, but the only reason it exists is because we're so good at our main thing. And it's been impressive to watch. I mean, I think there are some teams that could get this much attention and get it full of themselves and really fall off where they've been able to do it all. And it's been fun, and it feels really lucky to have been here to cover it. I talk to people around the NFL, journalists, and sometimes there are teams that never make the playoffs or don't make the playoffs for a decade. And so to have gone and covered 4 Super Bowls, it feels very lucky to be a part of it, and it's something that is very special and rare, and we'll see if they can even make that more special by pulling this off this year.
Pete, listen, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And it's been good to
Yeah.
chat.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Happy Halloween, my man.
Yeah, top man. Thank you, Pete. Cheers.